Arthur hardly slept for the rest of the night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the window every few minutes, hoping he would see the little girl again. He didn't. The garden remained quiet until the first light of morning. When the sun finally rose, he slowly got dressed and walked downstairs earlier than usual. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen. Eleanor was preparing breakfast. Grace was slicing fruit. Daniel was reading the morning newspaper. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Arthur looked around the room. "Where's Lily?" Eleanor smiled without looking up. "She's outside helping the gardener." Arthur's eyebrows slowly came together. "Already?" she insisted. Arthur quietly walked toward the back door. Outside, Lily was watering flowers, while the gardener trimmed a hedge nearby. She laughed at something the old gardener said. There was nothing unusual about her. She looked exactly like the same sweet little girl everyone had grown to love. Arthur watched her for several seconds before walking over. "Good morning." Lily turned immediately. "Good morning, Grandpa." Her smile was as warm as ever. Arthur studied her face. She looked well-rested, not tired, not sleepy, as though she had spent the whole night in bed. "You woke up early," Arthur said. "I always do." "What time?" She thought for a moment. "I don't know." "Before sunrise." Arthur nodded. "So, you slept well?" "Very well." She smiled again. "I had a nice dream." Arthur felt something tighten inside him. "A dream?" "Yes." "What was it about?" Lily looked toward the flowers. "I don't remember." She giggled softly. "Dreams disappear so quickly." Arthur forced a smile. "They certainly do." He slowly walked away. The gardener watched him leave before turning toward Lily. "He's a nice man." Lily nodded. "He worries a lot." The gardener chuckled. "That's what grandfathers do." Lily looked at Arthur's back as he disappeared into the house. "I know." Her smile slowly faded, only for a moment. Then it returned. Breakfast was unusually cheerful. Ethan had somehow convinced Daniel to help him fix an old bicycle that had been sitting in the garage for years. Grace planned to spend the afternoon taking photographs around the lake nearby. William had meetings scheduled for most of the day. Everyone chatted happily. Arthur barely spoke. His mind kept returning to the garden. Finally, William noticed. "You've been awfully quiet this morning." Arthur looked up. "I didn't sleep very well." "You should take a nap later." Arthur nodded. "I probably will." He almost told them. Almost. He almost said. "I saw Lily standing outside at 3 in the morning, but something stopped him." How would it sound? Like the imagination of an old man. So he remained silent. Later that afternoon, Grace and Lily sat together in the library. Grace was showing Lily some of her favorite books. "You can borrow any of these." Lily's eyes grew wide. "Really?" "Of course." She carefully picked up an old storybook. "My mother used to read this to me." Grace smiled. "Then you should have it." Lily hugged the book tightly against her chest. "Thank you." Arthur happened to walk past the open library door. He stopped for a moment. The scene warmed his heart. Grace looked so happy. Lily looked so grateful. Again, he wondered if he had imagined everything. Maybe he really had. That evening, rain clouds gathered once more. The wind picked up. The trees outside began swaying. Ethan looked through the window. "I think we're getting another storm." Daniel looked up from his laptop. "It'll probably pass." By sunset, rain was falling heavily against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. The lights flickered once, then returned. Lily looked toward the window. "I've never liked storms." Eleanor gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here." Lily smiled. "I know." Around 9 o'clock, the electricity suddenly went out. The entire house fell into darkness. "Oh, great," Ethan groaned. William reached for a flashlight kept inside a nearby drawer. "I'll start the backup generator." Within seconds, several flashlights lit the room. Soft beams of light danced across the walls. Grace laughed nervously. "This feels like we're telling ghost stories." Daniel smiled. Only if Ethan promises not to scream first. I don't scream. You absolutely do. Everyone laughed, even Lily. The lights returned a minute later. The cheerful mood came back almost immediately. No one thought much about the brief blackout, except Arthur. During those few seconds of darkness, he could have sworn someone had whispered his name, very softly, right beside his ear. He slowly looked around the room. Nobody else reacted. Nobody else seemed to have heard anything. He rubbed the back of his neck. Perhaps it had only been the wind. The next morning, Arthur decided to walk farther around the estate than usual. The rain had left the ground damp. Fresh footprints covered the garden paths. Workers had already begun cleaning fallen branches. Arthur enjoyed the cool morning air. As he reached the old oak tree near the edge of the property, he noticed something strange. The ground beneath the tree was covered with footprints. Workers, the gardener, probably Ethan too. Then, he noticed one small set, children's footprints. They led toward the tree. Arthur followed them carefully. Step by step, the footprints stopped beneath the tree. He looked around. There were no footprints leading away, only the ones leading toward it. Arthur frowned. He looked more closely. The ground was soft enough to leave clear marks. Anyone walking away should have left another trail, but there wasn't one. He stood there for almost a minute, trying to make sense of it. Finally, he heard footsteps behind him. Grandpa? He turned. It was Grace. What are you doing? Arthur looked back at the ground. I thought I saw something. Grace stepped closer. What? Arthur hesitated, then smiled. Oh, he gently tapped the ground with his cane. Nothing important. Grace looked where he had been staring. She saw only wet soil, nothing else. Come on, she said. Breakfast is ready. Arthur nodded. As they walked away, neither of them noticed Lily watching from an upstairs bedroom window. She stood perfectly still. Her face showed no emotion. She quietly watched Arthur until he disappeared into the house. Then, very slowly, she smiled. Not the warm smile everyone had come to know, not the shy smile of a lonely little girl. This one was different. It disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. And by the time Eleanor knocked on her bedroom door to call her for breakfast, the sweet little Lily everyone loved was smiling once again. Arthur couldn't stop thinking about the footprints. He had spent nearly an hour trying to convince himself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe the rain had washed some of them away. Maybe one of the workers had accidentally stepped over them. Maybe he had simply looked too quickly. The older he became, the more he questioned his own memory. By the time breakfast was over, he had almost succeeded in talking himself out of it. Almost. The family carried on with their usual routine. William left for work. Daniel disappeared into his home office. Grace spent the afternoon reading on the back porch. Ethan was determined to repair the old bicycle he had dragged out of the garage. Lily moved quietly from one task to another. She helped Eleanor prepare lunch. She folded fresh towels. She even carried a basket of apples into the pantry without being asked. Watching her, it was impossible to imagine she could bring harm to anyone. She never raised her voice. She never complained. If someone thanked her, she simply smiled. If there's anything else I can do, she would say, just let me know. The servants adored her. Even visitors who stopped by the house couldn't stop talking about how polite she was. One afternoon, a neighbor came over to return a book she had borrowed from Grace. As she was leaving, she stopped beside Eleanor. That little girl. Eleanor smiled. Lily? The woman nodded. She's wonderful. We've been very lucky. The woman looked toward the garden where Lily was helping the gardener. It feels like she's always belonged here. Eleanor looked outside and smiled proudly. It feels that way to us too. Arthur happened to overhear the conversation. He looked through the window. Lily was laughing as she watered a row of flowers. The gardener laughed with her. Everything looked perfectly normal. Arthur quietly walked away. He hated himself for doubting her. Maybe grief had simply made the little girl quieter than other children. Maybe the strange things he kept noticing weren't strange at all. Maybe he was simply becoming an old man who imagined problems where none existed. That thought stayed with him for the rest of the day. Late that afternoon, Eleanor found Arthur sitting alone on the porch. She placed a fresh cup of tea beside him. "You've been thinking a lot lately." Arthur smiled faintly. "Have I?" "I know that look." She sat beside him. "Something's bothering you." Arthur remained quiet. "You can tell me." He looked toward the gardens. "Lily." Eleanor waited patiently. "What about her?" Arthur searched for the right words. "I don't know." Eleanor smiled. "You don't know?" He shook his head. "I want to like her, and I do like her." Eleanor laughed softly. "You sound confused." "I am." She gently touched his arm. "She's been through something no child should ever experience." "I know. Maybe she's just different because of everything she's lost." Arthur nodded slowly. "You may be right. I think I am." She smiled warmly before standing. "Don't worry so much." After she walked away, Arthur whispered to himself, "I hope you're right." That evening, the family decided to have dinner outside. The weather had finally cleared after several days of rain. The sky was painted with soft shades of orange and purple. A gentle breeze carried the smell of flowers across the garden. Everyone seemed relaxed. Ethan somehow managed to make everyone laugh with another one of his ridiculous stories. Even William laughed so hard that he nearly spilled his drink. Lily laughed too. She looked happier than Arthur had ever seen her. At one point, she stood up. "I'll get more lemonade." "I'll help," Grace offered. Lily smiled. "I'll be right back." She disappeared into the house. Several minutes passed. Grace frowned. "She's taking a long time." "I'll check," Eleanor said. Before Eleanor could stand, Lily returned carrying a tray. "I'm sorry, I couldn't find the glasses." She handed everyone a drink. Arthur watched her carefully. Her hands were perfectly steady. Not a single drop spilled. When she handed Arthur his glass, she smiled. "I remembered you don't like too much ice." Arthur froze for a second. He slowly looked at the drink. She was right. He didn't. Nobody had mentioned it that evening. In fact, he couldn't remember ever telling Lily. He looked up. "How did you know that?" Lily blinked. "Idea." She looked confused. "I don't know." Then she laughed softly. "I guess I noticed." Arthur forced a smile. "You must pay very close attention." "I try." The conversation moved on, but Arthur's mind didn't. That night, sleep refused to come. He tossed and turned for nearly 2 hours. Finally, he gave up. He reached for the book resting on his bedside table. Reading usually helped. Tonight, it didn't. He couldn't focus on a single page. A strange feeling settled over him. Not fear, more like waiting, as though something was about to happen. He looked at the clock. 2:47 a.m. He sighed. "I'm getting ridiculous." He closed the book. Then, a soft sound drifted through the silence. Tap, tap, tap. Arthur looked toward the window. A tree branch? No. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from somewhere inside the house. Arthur slowly stood. He picked up his cane. The hallway outside his bedroom was dark. Only a small nightlight near the staircase gave off a faint glow. He stepped outside quietly. The sound stopped. He listened. Nothing. The house was completely silent. He started walking, slowly, carefully. Every floorboard seemed louder than usual. He reached the staircase. Still nothing. Then he heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it came from downstairs. Arthur tightened his grip on the cane. He began making his way down, one careful step after another. The old staircase creaked beneath his weight. When he reached the bottom, he stopped. The sound had disappeared again. He looked toward the kitchen. Dark. He looked toward the dining room. Empty. Then, out of the corner of his eye, He thought he saw someone turn the corner at the end of the hallway. Just a glimpse. A small figure. Arthur's heartbeat quickened. Lily? No answer. He walked toward the hallway. His breathing grew slower, steadier. He reached the corner. Nobody. Every room was empty. He looked toward the back door. Locked. The windows. Locked. Everything was exactly as it should be. Arthur let out a slow breath. He laughed quietly at himself. I really am getting old. He turned around and froze. At the far end of the hallway, for less than a second, he thought he saw Lily standing there. She wasn't moving. She simply stood in the darkness. Arthur blinked. The hallway was empty again. His heart pounded against his chest. He walked all the way to the end. Nothing. No footsteps. No open doors. No sign that anyone had been there. He checked Lily's bedroom before returning upstairs. The door was slightly open. He gently pushed it wider. Moonlight spilled across the room. Lily was asleep, curled beneath her blanket, breathing peacefully. Arthur stood there for a long moment. He almost smiled. You're imagining things, he whispered to himself. He quietly closed the door. As he walked back toward his room, he never noticed that Lily's eyes slowly opened. She stared at the closed bedroom door. Without moving, without blinking, a faint smile spread across her face. Then, just as quietly, she closed her eyes again, and the house fell silent once more.